The ship Aurora moved quietly through the endless stretch of space. Its silver frame reflected the faint light of distant stars, while its engines hummed in steady rhythm. Inside, the crew worked calmly. For them, this was another routine passage across neutral space, a path many traders and patrols used. The galaxy was wide, and though dangers always lurked, Captain Daniel believed that careful planning kept them safe. Daniel sat in the command chair, scanning the charts on the display. He was a man of calm presence, steady in voice and movement. His crew trusted him because he never showed fear, even when situations grew uncertain. Beside him, Mira, the ship's chief engineer, was checking power levels. She often reminded the crew that the Aurora was not the newest vessel, but with enough care it could outlast any storm. The rest of the crew carried out their duties with routine ease. Jonas, the pilot, leaned back in his seat, humming softly as he adjusted course. Ellen, the medic, walked across the deck carrying a small scanner, making sure life support remained balanced. They were a small team, but each one carried a role as vital as the next. Then, without warning, the lights flickered. A low rumble echoed through the walls of the ship, followed by a sudden silence. The hum of the engines cut out. The control panels dimmed. The Aurora drifted forward without power. Jonas straightened quickly in his seat. "Engines. Offline," he said, disbelief in his voice. Mira tapped furiously at her console, but the display barely responded. "It's not just the engines. We've lost all main systems." Daniel's voice stayed firm. "Switch to emergency power." But when Mira tried, nothing happened. The ship remained dark except for faint red lights that blinked on slowly, spreading across the hallways. The air felt heavier, the silence pressing on all of them. A transmission cut through the quiet, hissing with static before a voice spoke. It was cold, heavy, and filled with mockery. "Humans, weak travelers in borrowed space. Your ship is ours now. Prepare for boarding." Daniel's jaw tightened. "The Varn," he said softly, recognizing the accent. The Varn were a cruel faction, known across many sectors for disabling ships and stripping them down. They rarely left survivors. To them, humans were little more than scavengers pretending to be explorers. Now the Aurora had fallen into their trap. Ellen's face paled. "What do we do, Captain? Without power, they'll board us in minutes." Daniel rose from his chair slowly, his steps measured. His eyes moved across the faces of his crew, reading their fear, but he would not let it grow. "We do what humans always do," he said firmly. "We think, we endure. We fight." Mira slammed her hand against her panel, her frustration boiling. "They use some kind of virus. It's inside the mainframe, locking everything. It isn't a normal shutdown. They planned this." Jonas turned toward Daniel. "Then it's over. We can't even run." "No," Daniel said, his voice sharp but steady. "It is not over. They expect panic. They expect surrender. We will give them neither." The crew fell silent at his words. Even Jonas, who often hid worry behind jokes, straightened with new focus. Daniel moved closer to Mira's station. "Can you work around it?" She shook her head at first, but then paused, eyes narrowing as her mind raced. "Maybe, not in the normal way. The virus locks all standard commands, but it doesn't erase everything. There might be unused space, empty threads the code didn't touch. If I can reach those, I could rebuild some functions from scratch." "That sounds dangerous," Ellen said softly. "It is," Mira admitted. "If I fail, the ship could break completely. But if I succeed, we get something back. Engines, shields, weapons, anything." Daniel placed a hand on the edge of her console. "Do it. If there is even the smallest chance, take it." Humanity was not built to wait for mercy. The Varn voice returned through the speakers, harsher this time. "Open your doors. Surrender now and your end will be quick." Daniel looked at the blinking red lights across the bridge. He thought of Earth, of the many times humans had been called weak or unworthy by stronger forces. Yet time and time again, humanity endured. They were stubborn, resourceful, impossible to break. He turned back to his crew. "We will not surrender. Jonas, keep them busy with false transmissions. Pretend we are negotiating. Ellen, keep everyone calm. Mira, focus everything on that one chance. If the Varn believe they have already won, let us prove them wrong." The crew nodded, one after another. Fear still lived in their eyes, but so did determination. They were human, and humans always found a way. As Daniel returned to his chair, he spoke in a low voice meant only for himself. "They disabled our ship, but they have no idea what that means for us. They think we are broken. They are wrong. Outside, the Varn ships drew closer, their sharp black hulls like teeth closing around prey. But inside the Aurora, a fire had been lit. The crew refused to break. The first step of resistance had begun. The Aurora drifted like a silent shadow through space. Without its engines, the ship had no voice, no strength, only the quiet glow of red lights that reminded the crew of their fragile state. Outside, the enemy waited with sharp patience. Inside, the crew gathered around the dim bridge, each one wrestling with fear and determination. Mira sat at her station, her face half lit by the fading glow of her console. She scrolled through endless streams of broken code, lines of alien symbols twisting across the screen. The virus buried itself deep inside the ship's systems, turning every normal command into silence. She pressed her lips together, frustration building, but she refused to give in. Daniel stood behind her, his arms crossed. His steady gaze moved from Mira's console to the view outside the window, where the Varn ships circled like predators. He knew the enemy believed victory was already theirs. That belief was their mistake. Jonas broke the silence first. "Captain, we can't sit here forever. Their boarding craft will latch on soon. If Mira can't find a way, maybe we should think of another plan." "Something quick?" Ellen frowned. "Like what?" "We have no weapons, no engines. Even life support is barely running. If we fight hand-to-hand, we'll lose." "Better than waiting," Jonas said, his voice sharp. He had never been good at hiding his nerves. Daniel raised a hand, cutting the argument short. His tone remained calm, though each second of silence pressed heavier on them. "Mira is working. Until she says there is no chance, we hold to this path." Mira did not look up from her console, but her voice carried strength. "There is always a chance. This virus is strong, yes, but I see cracks. Whoever made it thought humans would give up once they saw their ship go dark. They didn't expect us to keep digging." Ellen leaned closer. "Cracks?" Mira nodded, pointing at the screen. "Here, small sections of unused code space. Empty, untouched. I can slip my own code into those places. Rebuild systems one by one. It will not be clean and it will not be safe. But it might give us power again." Daniel's eyes sharpened. "How long?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Hours, maybe less, maybe more. And I will need silence, no interruptions. One wrong move and the system could collapse completely." Daniel nodded once. "Then you will have your silence. The rest of us will protect this ship until you succeed." Jonas sighed, running a hand over his face. "And if she doesn't?" Daniel looked straight at him. His voice was firm, not harsh. "Then we fall. But we fall standing, not kneeling." The words settled over the crew like a shield. They all knew their situation was dire, yet Daniel's calm strength kept despair from breaking through. Suddenly, the comms crackled again. The Varn voice returned, filled with cold amusement. "Humans, you delay the inevitable. We are patient. We will cut your ship open and take what we want. Your resistance changes nothing." Daniel leaned forward, pressing the transmit key. His voice came out steady, controlled. "This is Captain Daniel of the Aurora. You may believe we are beaten, but you are wrong. Humans do not surrender." The Varn laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. "Then you will suffer." The transmission cut. Jonas glanced at Daniel. "You just made them angry." "That is good," Daniel replied. "Anger makes them careless." Mira kept typing, her fingers moving in fast rhythm. Sparks of light flickered across her screen as she pushed lines of her own code into the empty gaps. The process was delicate, like stitching a wound while the patient still lived. Sweat formed on her brow, but her eyes remained sharp. Ellen moved quietly through the bridge, checking oxygen levels and distributing water to the crew. Even in moments like this, she held to her duty. Jonas sat with his hands over the flight controls, though they remained dark. He whispered softly to himself, half prayer, half promise, that he would fly the Aurora again. Time passed slowly. Every minute felt stretched, every second a test of patience. Outside, the Varn ships tightened their circle, their weapons glowing faintly as a warning. Mira's console beeped suddenly. She gasped and leaned forward. "I have something. Not much, but something." Daniel stepped closer. "Show me." She pointed at the screen. I rerouted through one of the empty threads. "Look, emergency lights now run through my code, not theirs. It is small, but it proves my method works. If I expand this, I can reach bigger systems." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Good work. Keep going." Jonas straightened. "Captain, if she can reach engines first, I can move us away before they board." "No," Mira said quickly. "Engines are complex. Too big a risk at the start. I need to start with shields or weapons. Smaller systems are safer to rebuild. If I go too fast, we lose everything. Daniel nodded. Then you choose. You know the path. We trust you. Her hands moved again, faster this time, as if the small victory gave her strength. But the Varn did not wait forever. Another transmission came, this time colder, sharper. Time is done. We are boarding now. The crew exchanged tense looks. Ellen gripped her scanner tighter. Jonas clenched his fists. Daniel stood tall. And Mira, without pausing her work, whispered one line. Let them come. The Aurora is not finished yet. The ship remained in shadow, but within that shadow something had begun to stir. A spark of defiance, a promise that humans would never yield quietly. The struggle in the dark had only just begun. The red lights of the Aurora pulsed like a heartbeat inside the dark corridors. The crew gathered in the central chamber, their faces half hidden in the dim glow. Outside, the Varn ships hovered, waiting for the perfect time to strike. Inside, a new plan was forming, one born of desperation but fueled by human defiance. Mira stood at the center of the group, a portable console in her hands. Her dark hair was messy, her eyes sharp with determination. I found a way, she said, her voice steady but urgent. The virus controls every standard function, but it doesn't erase the framework. It leaves space, unused memory threads. If I can weave my code through them, I can build new functions. Not the same as before, but enough to give us a fighting chance. The crew leaned closer, listening. Jonas frowned, his hands folded tightly. You mean, rewrite the ship? From the ground up? Mira nodded. Yes, not patching. Not repairing, rebuilding. Ellen shifted nervously. That sounds impossible. We don't have weeks or months. We only have hours before the Varn breakthrough. Daniel's voice cut through the doubt. Impossible is what humans specialize in. If Mira says it can be done, then we make it happen. Tell us what you need. Mira drew in a deep breath. I'll need everyone. This isn't just code. We'll have to rewire systems manually. Route power through paths that were never meant to carry it. We'll connect old prototypes, half-tested equipment, and ideas that were abandoned. It will be dangerous, but it's our only chance. Daniel gave a firm nod. Then it is decided. We do it. The crew dispersed into action. Jonas hurried to the cockpit to prepare manual controls. Ellen went to the storage bay to gather medical supplies, knowing injuries were likely. Mira and Daniel headed to engineering, where sparks already danced from overloaded circuits. Inside the engineering chamber, the air was hot and heavy with the smell of burned metal. Wires hung loose, panels lay open, and the soft hum of backup power whispered faintly. Mira rolled up her sleeves and pointed to the exposed reactor links. These can handle more energy than the manuals say, she explained quickly. The builders played safe. If we push them, we can double the output, but it may burn the conduits. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Will it hold long enough to fight? It has to, she answered. They worked quickly. Mira soldered wires with precision, her hands steady despite the urgency. Daniel lifted heavy plates, securing them into place, his calm strength balancing her speed. Each step carried risk, but together they moved as if guided by a shared rhythm. Meanwhile, Jonas sat in the cockpit, staring at his unlit controls. He spoke softly to himself, as though speaking to the ship. Come back to me, girl. I'll take you places no Varn ship can follow. His hands moved over the panels, reconnecting circuits, adjusting joysticks, preparing for the moment when power returned. In the storage bay, Ellen packed medical kits, sealing bandages and injectors into a portable case. Her hands trembled slightly, but she kept moving. She had chosen to stand here to share this fate with her crew, and she would not falter now. Hours stretched like days. The Varn ships outside began to reposition, their boarding craft sliding closer. Time was running out. Back in engineering, Mira's console beeped. She froze for a second, then smiled faintly. It's working. I rebuilt the framework for shields. They won't be strong, but they'll exist. Daniel clapped her shoulder. Good, start on weapons next. Jonas's voice crackled through the comm. Captain, their boarding craft is moving in. We're nearly out of time. Daniel's voice remained steady. Then we make time. Mira, give me something. Anything. Her fingers raced across the console, code spilling into the empty spaces of the system. She linked weapons control directly into shield framework, ignoring the clean separation engineers always demanded. It was messy, but it was alive. The ship groaned, panels shaking, lights flickering. Then for a brief second, the forward cannons glowed with faint blue energy. Jonas shouted with joy. Weapons are responding. I can fire at least once. Mira leaned back, exhausted but smiling. It's not much, but it's proof. We can fight. Daniel looked at each of them. This is our spark of defiance. They thought us broken. Now we show them what humans can do when cornered. The Varn boarding craft latched onto the Aurora, metal claws digging into the hull. The sound echoed through the corridors like thunder. The crew held their breath. Jonas's voice carried sharp resolve. Captain, say the word. Daniel stood tall, his voice low but filled with iron. Fire. The Aurora shook as energy surged through its patched systems. The forward cannons unleashed a burst of light, striking the boarding craft before it could open. The explosion lit the dark space, tearing the enemy apart in a flash. Silence followed, then cheers filled the bridge. The crew had done the impossible. They had turned helplessness into hope. Mira, still breathing hard, whispered, "If we can do this with broken pieces, imagine what we can build next." Daniel's eyes shone with fierce pride. "Then let us build. For as long as we draw breath, we will never bow." Outside, the Varn ship stirred, surprised by the sudden strike. Inside, the crew of the Aurora prepared for the next step. The spark had been lit, and nothing would stop the fire to come. The explosion of the Varn boarding craft echoed across the sensors of every nearby ship. For a brief moment, the Aurora stood like a defiant flame in the darkness. But the crew knew the danger was not over. The enemy would come again, this time with greater force. If they were to survive, the Aurora needed more than patched shields and a single working cannon. It needed transformation. In the heart of engineering, sparks rained as Mira tore through panels and rewired circuits. Her hands moved quickly, guided by instinct as much as training. The ship's systems were fragile, but she was building something new from the broken remains. Daniel stood nearby, lifting heavy components, sealing exposed conduits, and keeping order among the crew. His voice carried calm authority, a steady anchor in the storm. "We don't have days. We don't even have one full cycle. Every hour we buy must count. Mira, focus on stability first. Jonas, report any enemy movement. Ellen, keep everyone standing." Jonas's voice came through the comm, tight with focus. "Varn cruisers are still circling. They're keeping distance for now. Looks like they're regrouping." "That means we have time," Daniel said. "Not much, but enough." Mira leaned over a console, sweat dripping down her brow. "Captain, I can't bring the old systems back the way they were. The virus is too deep, but I can build around it. I'll design new pathways, unorthodox, unstable, but powerful. If it works, the Aurora will not just recover. It will be something else entirely." Daniel nodded once. "Then that is the path we take." The work began in waves. Mira directed the changes, and the rest of the crew followed her lead. Panels were removed, replaced, and rebuilt. Old storage compartments were stripped to make room for power conduits. Abandoned prototypes, long dismissed as unsafe, were pulled from crates and connected to the ship's frame. Jonas entered the chamber with a grin that masked his nerves. He carried a set of experimental thruster modules, heavy and uneven. These were sitting in storage for months. The builders said they overheated too fast, but if Mira can reroute cooling, I can push the Aurora into maneuvers the Varn won't expect. Mira looked up, her eyes narrowing as she studied the thrusters. Risky, but possible. "Bring them here." Ellen arrived moments later, dragging a small crate of medical gel and injector packs. "If you're going to push this ship beyond its limits, then we need these ready. Burns, shocks, strain, it will all come, but at least we'll have ways to keep moving." Even Daniel joined the hands-on work, pulling open reactor doors and adjusting the heavy stabilizers inside. His calm strength inspired the crew to push harder. They were not just repairing a ship. They were forging a weapon. Hours passed like minutes. The sound of tools clashing against metal filled the halls. The smell of burned circuits mixed with fresh sparks. The crew worked without rest, driven by the knowledge that the enemy would not wait forever. Finally, Mira gathered the crew on the bridge. Her console glowed with strange pulsing lights. "The systems are linked. Not clean, not safe, but alive. The reactor is now tied to adaptive conduits. The shields can shift frequency to match incoming fire. Weapons are fused with power lines usually meant for engines, and Jonas's thrusters are connected. The ship is unstable, but it can move, it can fight, and it can endure." Jonas rubbed his hands together, his eyes shining. "So we turned a broken patrol ship into a monster. I like it." Ellen, though still cautious, allowed a small smile. "If it holds." Daniel looked around the bridge. He saw the exhaustion in their faces, but also the fire. It will hold because it must. Humanity was never meant to rely on perfect machines. We thrive because we adapt. Today, the Aurora becomes more than a ship. It becomes a message. Mira tapped her console, activating the new systems. The ship groaned, shaking as energy surged through the rewired frame. Lights blazed to life across the bridge, brighter than before. Glowing with raw power, shields shimmered faintly around the hull, shifting colors as they adapted to invisible tests. The forward cannons pulsed with light stronger than ever. Jonas gripped the controls. For the first time since the ambush, the engines roared. The Aurora moved, not drifting helplessly, but cutting through space with purpose. He laughed, unable to contain himself. She's alive. Not just alive, she's reborn. Ellen watched the panels with wide eyes. It doesn't even feel like the same ship. Mira allowed herself a small smile. Because it isn't. This is something new. Something the Varn never planned for. Outside, the enemy ships noticed the change. Their scanners detected rising energy levels from the Aurora. The Varn captains exchanged confused signals. How could a crippled human vessel suddenly show this much power? Daniel leaned forward in his chair, his eyes sharp. Let them see. Let them wonder. We are no longer prey. The Aurora cut a path through the darkness, its hull gleaming, its systems pulsing with new life. It had been disabled, nearly destroyed, yet from its broken pieces, the crew had built something greater. They had rebuilt not only their ship but their hope. And as the Varn closed in once more, the humans stood ready, not as victims but as defiant survivors preparing for war. The silence of space held its breath as the Aurora came alive. Its hull glowed faintly, its engines roared with unstable power, and its weapons hummed with energy not seen before. Inside the bridge, the crew watched the panels light up one by one, their hard work finally breathing life into the ship. Jonas gripped the controls with both hands, his heart racing. For so long, the ship had been dead weight in space, but now it moved beneath his fingers like a beast ready to run. He whispered softly as if speaking to the vessel itself. Welcome back. Mira adjusted the console at her side, checking the new systems. The adaptive shields shifted colors, glowing blue, then green, then gold as they tested themselves against simulated hits. Her face lit with cautious pride. It's holding. The systems are rough, but they're alive. Ellen stood near the medical station, scanning the life support readings. For once, they were steady. She allowed herself to breathe easier. It feels like a miracle. Daniel's eyes remained fixed on the star-speckled window ahead. His voice was steady, but his words carried weight. This is no miracle. This is human will. We refuse to stay broken. As if to answer him, the comm system crackled again. The harsh, mocking voice of the Varn commander filled the bridge. Humans, you destroyed one craft, but that was luck. Your ship is crippled, your fate sealed. We will tear you apart. Daniel leaned forward, pressing the comm key. His voice came out calm, edged with iron. You believe we are weak. You believe we break easily. But you have made a mistake. You gave us time to rebuild, and now you face not the Aurora you disabled, but something far greater. The Varn laughed, but unease lingered in their tone. You dare to boast? Then show us. Outside, 3 Varn cruisers moved into attack formation. Their sharp black hulls glimmered with weapon fire ready to unleash. Daniel turned to Jonas. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. To Mira. Ready weapons. And finally, he spoke to the ship itself, his words quiet but filled with pride. Show them what we have become. The first volley from the Varn ship struck. Blazing red beams cut across the void, slamming into the Aurora's shields. The hull shook violently, but the adaptive shields shimmered, shifting color instantly, absorbing the attack. Instead of collapsing, they grew brighter. Mira gasped. The shields. They're not just blocking, they're learning. Jonas grinned, gripping the controls tighter. Then let's teach them a few lessons. With a sharp motion, he spun the ship to the side. The new thrusters screamed, pushing the Aurora into maneuvers no patrol ship should have managed. The vessel darted between beams of light, twisting like a predator avoiding its prey's traps. Now, Daniel ordered Mira hit the firing command. The forward cannons unleashed a pulse of raw energy, far stronger than anything the Aurora had carried before. The beam tore through the first Varn cruiser, splitting it open in a flash of fire. Jonas shouted with joy. One down. The other 2 cruisers scrambled, their formations breaking. They fired again, but each strike weakened as the Aurora's shields adapted faster. What once threatened to crush them now only fueled their defiance. Daniel's eyes never left the window. Push harder. Show them everything. Jonas thrust the ship forward, weaving between the enemy. The thrusters glowed white-hot, leaving trails of light as the Aurora danced in the void. Mira rerouted power between weapons and shields in perfect rhythm, her mind racing faster than the systems themselves. The second cruiser tried to flank them, but Jonas spun the ship sharply, engines flaring. The Aurora slid beneath the cruiser's hull and Mira fired again. Blue light erupted, slicing the vessel apart from below. Ellen grabbed the railing as the bridge shook from the recoil. Her voice trembled with awe. This isn't just survival anymore. This is victory. Only one Varn cruiser remained, but its weapons faltered. The crew inside must have seen what happened to their allies, and fear began to show in their movements. Daniel stood tall, his voice calm but unyielding. Send them a message. End this battle. Jonas dove toward the last cruiser, the Aurora cutting through space like a blade. Mira charged the cannons to their maximum, energy surging until the panels buzzed with heat. Firing, she said. The final shot erupted, striking the cruiser's core. In seconds, the enemy vessel exploded into fragments, scattering across the stars. Silence followed. The only sound was the steady hum of the reborn Aurora. On the bridge, the crew stared at one another, their exhaustion heavy but their pride even heavier. They had not just survived, they had shattered their enemy. Jonas leaned back in his chair, still catching his breath. Captain, this ship isn't the Aurora anymore. She's something else. Something unstoppable. Mira smiled faintly. We built her from scraps and fire. We gave her more than systems, we gave her our spirit. Daniel looked out into the endless stars. His voice was quiet, but it carried strength that filled the room. Then we give her a name worthy of what she has become. He paused, letting the silence grow. This ship is God mode. The crew fell silent, the weight of the words settling deep in their hearts. They had faced the edge of destruction and risen stronger than ever. Their ship was no longer a fragile patrol craft. It was a legend being born. And though more enemies would come, none would ever forget the day a broken human ship awoke with the power of gods. The void of space seemed quieter than usual, but that silence was only the calm before the storm. Far beyond the reach of stars, the Varn fleet was regrouping. Their scouts reported the destruction of their cruisers, and confusion rippled through their ranks. They had never expected a single human ship once disabled to strike back with such force. Inside the Aurora, the crew stood ready. The bridge glowed with the steady pulse of shields and energy cores. Daniel's eyes scanned the sensors, noting the movements of the remaining enemy vessels. They are coming back, he said calmly, though the weight of command pressed on his shoulders. Jonas tightened his grip on the controls. They brought reinforcements. At least 10 ships this time. Daniel nodded. We expected that. Let them come. The Aurora is ready. Mira's fingers flew over the console. Shields are adapting faster than ever. Weapons are fully charged. The reactor is stable but running at maximum. Any more and we risk overheating. But right now we can handle it. Ellen checked the medical supplies one last time. I'm ready. They'll try everything, but so will we. The first of the Varn ships emerged from behind an asteroid field. Their weapons lit up, red beams streaking through space, aiming to overwhelm the Aurora. Jonas steered sharply, dodging the initial volley. The adaptive shields shimmered under fire, absorbing energy and learning the patterns. Every hit seemed to make the Aurora stronger, as if the ship itself understood the threat. Mira fired the first counterattack. Pulses of blue energy surged from the forward cannons, striking one of the Varn ships squarely. It shuddered violently before exploding into fragments, scattering debris across the void. Daniel's voice was calm, steady, and firm. One down. Focus on the next wave. Keep your formation loose. Don't let them pin us. The remaining ships adjusted quickly, trying to flank the human vessel. Jonas twisted the controls, performing maneuvers that defied expectation. The thrusters flared and the Aurora darted in unpredictable paths, dodging beams with precision. Each movement made the crew feel a surge of confidence. Mira directed fire with expert timing. Energy beams leapt from the cannons, striking with accuracy that seemed impossible. Each Varn ship that tried to close in found itself either damaged or destroyed. The adaptive shields glowed brighter with each attack absorbed, reshaping and redirecting power across the hull. Ellen moved quietly through the bridge, monitoring the crew. Everyone stay focused. They will try everything. Don't let fatigue make mistakes. Daniel nodded. We are not just fighting. We are showing them what humans are capable of. They may have superior numbers, but we have courage and ingenuity. The Varn tried a new tactic, sending a formation of small attack drones to disable the Aurora. But the ship's upgraded sensors detected them instantly. Jonas dodged their approach while Mira directed a precise blast that shredded the drones before they could reach the hull. Keep coming, Daniel said quietly. They have no idea what they are up against. The next volley of Varn cruisers focused fire, trying to overwhelm the adaptive shields. Red beams collided with blue energy, creating sparks that lit the darkness of space. The Aurora groaned as power surged, but the crew pushed on, coordinating attacks and maneuvers seamlessly. Jonas laughed with excitement. They're learning too slowly. We can predict their moves. Mira smiled, her eyes focused on the console. It's not just prediction. The ship adapts as we act. Every shot we fire teaches her something new. Daniel stood tall, his gaze steady. This is humanity at its best. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. And we will not be broken. One by one, the Varn ships fell. The adaptive shields absorbed each new attack, while the Aurora's weapons struck with unmatched precision. Even the final cruiser, the largest of the fleet, could not withstand the combined force of ingenuity, courage, and determination. As the last Varn ship exploded, silence returned to the void. The Aurora floated among the debris, its hull glowing faintly from the energy that had surged through it. The crew stood together on the bridge, exhausted but triumphant. Ellen allowed herself a small smile. We did it. All of them. Jonas leaned back in his seat, rubbing his hands over his face. I can't believe it. From a crippled ship to this, Mira rested against her console, sweat dripping but eyes shining. We rebuilt more than a ship. We built a weapon, a shield, and a spirit that cannot be broken. Daniel looked at his crew with pride. This battle is over, but the message has been sent. Humanity will never be underestimated. We may be small, we may be counted as weak, but we endure, we adapt, and we rise stronger than anyone expects. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. The debris of the Varn fleet floated silently, a reminder of what humans could achieve when pushed to the edge. The Aurora had been disabled, nearly destroyed, yet from that weakness they had built something unstoppable. Jonas leaned back, smiling. I guess the galaxy will have to remember the name of this ship now. Mira's voice was quiet but full of pride. God mode, Daniel nodded. And let it be known, humanity stands tall. Today we fight not because we want to, but because we must. And when we fight, we do not fail. The crew stood in silence for a moment, feeling the weight of their victory and the promise it carried. The Aurora had become a symbol of defiance, ingenuity, and the unbreakable will of humanity. The galaxy would never forget this day. The stars stretched endlessly before the Aurora as it drifted through space, its hull glowing softly after the fury of battle. The Varn fleet had been defeated, scattered, and humiliated. For the crew, silence was not empty but full of meaning. They had survived the impossible, transformed a crippled ship into a weapon of legend, and sent a message no enemy could ignore. Daniel stood on the bridge, arms folded, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond. He felt the weight of command but also pride. We did it, he said quietly. We survived. We proved that humans cannot be underestimated. Jonas leaned back in his seat, letting a rare smile stretch across his face. Survived? Captain, we didn't just survive. We tore them apart. They'll think twice before crossing humans again. Ellen moved to stand beside Daniel, her hands resting lightly on the railing. They may be gone, but we cannot forget how close it was. If Mira had failed, none of us would be here. We need to remember this, our strength, our teamwork, and our courage. Mira, still at her console, smiled faintly. It wasn't just me. Every one of us made this possible. Jonas with his piloting, Ellen with her care for everyone, and you, Captain, guiding us when we could have fallen apart. Daniel nodded. We all contributed, but more than that, we proved something about humanity. We endure, we adapt. We rise stronger from every challenge. Today, this ship is proof. The bridge was quiet for a moment, each crew member reflecting on the journey from helplessness to victory. They had been trapped in darkness, faced certain defeat, and yet through determination, skill, and courage, they had forged a new future. Outside, Distant stars gleamed like tiny fires across the void. The Aurora's hull reflected them, its lights pulsing with power, adaptive shields shimmering faintly. The ship itself seemed alive, a testament to what could happen when humans refused to surrender. Jonas spoke again, his voice filled with awe. "Captain, do you think they'll ever forget us?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but we didn't do this for fear or for glory. We did it because we could. Because humans never give up even when the odds are against them. The galaxy may remember and some may fear us, but that is the natural consequence of strength earned through courage." Mira leaned back, her hands resting lightly on the console. "God mode is more than just a name now. It's a symbol. A reminder that even when a human ship is broken, the crew can make it unstoppable. That is who we are." Ellen smiled softly. "And we must continue to be careful. Other threats will come. But today we have shown that humanity can face anything. We are capable of the impossible." Daniel nodded firmly. "Yes, and we must carry this lesson forward. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who may follow. This is more than a victory. It is a statement. Humanity stands tall not because of size or numbers, but because of determination, ingenuity, and courage." The crew looked around the bridge, sharing quiet glances. They had fought together, worked together, and survived together. Bonds stronger than metal or circuits had formed between them, ties that would not break easily. Jonas stood, walking toward the viewport. "Captain, what now? Where do we go from here?" Daniel's eyes remained on the stars. "We return home. We repair fully, rest, and then continue our mission. The galaxy is wide, full of challenges, but today, we have shown that no obstacle is too great for those who refuse to surrender. And the story of the Aurora, of humans who turned a disabled ship into a weapon beyond imagination, will live long in memory." Mira added, "We rebuilt more than a ship. We rebuilt hope, and hope travels faster than any weapon." Ellen stepped closer to the console, her voice soft but firm. "Then let us make sure this hope reaches everywhere it can, not with threats or fear, but with proof of what humans can achieve when united." Daniel nodded once more, a quiet smile touching his lips. "Exactly. We are not just survivors. We are pioneers." Today the Aurora became more than a ship. It became a legend. And legends inspire, long after the battle ends. Outside, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter. The Aurora moved forward, steady, unbroken, its crew standing tall with pride and determination. The Varn may have underestimated them, but humanity had shown its true power, the ability to rise from nothing, to create strength from weakness, and to turn fear into victory. Jonas looked at the glowing ship. "We did it. The Aurora, God mode. I think the galaxy will remember our name." Daniel placed a hand on the console, looking at his crew. "Let them remember. But let us never forget what it took to achieve this. Courage, teamwork, and the refusal to accept defeat. That is humanity. And that is why we will always rise." The crew stood together in quiet pride. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, full of possibilities. The Aurora moved forward not just as a ship, but as a symbol of hope, ingenuity, and the unstoppable spirit of humanity. And as they traveled into the unknown, one truth remained clear: humans, when tested, could become legends.